Brendan, once again, congratulations. We talked earlier. I'm sure this is a bittersweet moment for you.
I've used that word a lot the last few days. I went into Nighttown on New Year's Eve and I sat and I watched Dominic Farnacci play what will be my last concert at Nighttown, virtually on New Year's Eve. And I actually had to excuse myself from the table and I went in the car and I kind of wept a bit because, it's tough, There's blood and sweat in those walls, and it just kind of came out to me that night on New Year's Eve. So yeah, it's definitely bittersweet. It's been a very, very tough day today because I woke up this morning at 8 o'clock, and the first thing I did was call all my employees that have been with me for years and years, and it was hard. There was, people have been with me for a quarter of a century, and the emotions were shock, disbelief, hope for the future, and fear, and fear is one of them, and then I moved on to a list that I wrote down 2 nights ago with my wife and I here, and there were 50 people on that list, and as the day went by today, the list expanded and expanded and expanded. So yeah. I'm wiped out from phone calls, I'll tell you.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, you touched on this, and you talked about what's in the walls and what you put into. When did you purchase Nighttown?
Russ, I came out remembering you back in New York on TV, but I came out from from New York in 1992. Followed my wife's job out here. I walked into Nighttown one day in April of 1992, and I spoke with John Barr, the owner at the time, and I asked for a job as a bartender for 1 year because I'm going back to New York. There's no way I'm staying in this town. And 6 months in, he asked me to become the general manager. And then I fell in love with Cleveland. I really fell in love with this place and the people. And I bought Nighttown in 2001. And I've owned it ever since. And, I've expanded it. I expanded the music offerings and the private events and all that kind of stuff. But I when we did the closing on last Thursday at Johnny's downtown, one of my favorite places in town, I invited the man who's up in his years now, who financed me back in the day. And when I closed on Nighttown back then, he said to me the very day, and we've said this over the years, everything in life is a Broadway play. And he said, just remember that. And the Broadway play that's called Nighttown is going to go on, but this particular stage manager is exiting stage left, I guess.
I understand. That's a great way.
But the important thing is the play goes on.
Well, I was just going to ask you, what can you tell us, or can you tell us who the new? I think you disagree. Can you tell us?
There you are.
There you are. Okay, Brendan, what is the future of Nighttown? Can you tell us who the new owners are and what do they plan to do?
Yeah, Ross, I can tell you what I'm contractually bound and allowed to tell you. And so at this point in time, I cannot tell you who the new owners are because they're not ready to go public with this yet. What I can tell you is they're in very late stage negotiations with one of Cleveland's most respected chefs, and a person who I've respected since soon after I got to Cleveland, a true culinary genius. And when he takes over the helm, probably sometime late June, early July, after they do some much needed renovations at Nighttown, I am very, very hopeful for the future of Cedar Fairmont and Nighttown, because I think, everyone has a role in a restaurant. John Barr started it. I took it to my level. I believe this person will take it to another level completely that will just blow everyone out of the water. And, we've got Doug Katz up the block at Jug. We've got this fella coming in, taking over Nighttown and the new development on the top of the hill. I know from the developers, they've got a big gun coming in there too. So your new restaurant row in Cleveland is going to be in Cleveland Heights on Cedar Hill.
Wow. Now you own all that property up there, right? Is that?
Yeah, I own all the property up to and including the bank in the corner, which is now being renovated and made into one of the coolest Chipotles you'll ever see. With beer, with a drive-through where there's no interaction, where it's a touch and go kind of thing, and they're retaining the old structure of the bank, which is a classic piece of 1960s architecture, mid-century architecture. And so the hill is going to look very much the same, but it's exciting times, especially with the Top of the Hill project going on.
Now, did you sell all your property there, or
I did? No, I
Okay.
sold everything. I sold everything to these fellas.
Let me ask you something. You have been on the forefront of thinking about your employees and closing earlier than you had to by
Hmm.
state mandate. How much of your decision to sell the restaurant has to do with the state of the world right now, COVID-19?
Yeah, so Russ, you're right. I was the first restaurant in the state of Ohio to voluntarily close before DeWine said you have to close. Now, that honestly was me and my New York experience, watching what was going on in New York and watching people like Danny Meyer, my hero, closing his restaurants. I took my lead from him back then. When I closed down the second time, I did it because it stopped being fun. It was not fun when every day you go into a place. Our world is about making people happy, right? And I'm going in there, I'm putting plastic screens up between people. I'm telling my staff to wash their hands every 10 minutes. And although I have to tell you, we had a really, really good summer. People came out and supported us. I've been doing this 29 years, so at least I was in a financial position that a lot of my uh, people in the business are not in. And I decided, look, I'm just closing till maybe April or May of next year. And to your question about what part COVID had to do with this, I would like to think that this is a good news story, not a bad news story. This is a story about renewal and about continuity. I never put a sign in the window saying Nighttown's for sale. People came to me. And um, my wife and I both had a couple of health issues this year. And where the COVID part comes in, I would say, is when you get a little illness, and my wife's illness scared the bejesus out of me. Uh, I decided, you know what, it's time we stopped and smelt the roses. We've been working like crazy for 29 years, and then, of course, as we all know, COVID got all our attentions into what we had been doing up to this point, and how we have been living our lives, and how, I don't know, maybe how we should have been living our lives. And if there's a role for COVID in the sale, that's the only role it has, the role of self-examination and looking inwards and saying, what's important at the end of the day.
As we've talked about, and as you've expressed here, things in this climate are not great for the restaurant industry. But what I think I hear you telling me is this was more about you reassessing where you are in life right now, and less about the business angle of this. Do I hear that correctly?
Absolutely. I mean, Russ, I would have reopened Nighttown in April. I actually think these guys are smarter than me in waiting till June or July. I've owned the Nighttown building for years. I didn't have rent to pay. We were fine. I mean, financially, I was fine, and we could have opened and we could have redone it. But again, in particular, my wife's illness brought laser-like focus on. I've been out of the house every Christmas Eve, every New Year's Eve for 29 years. I owe it to her to give her some time. And I've lived a pretty rough life, so I don't know how much time I've got left on the planet. So I want to spend it with her.
Well, that's fantastic. What are you going to miss the most, Brendan?
The people, I mean, the people, again, as I said to you earlier, I came to Cleveland kicking and screaming. I didn't want to be here. And when I got to know the people of Cleveland Heights, and again, it's the location of Nighttown. It's the people that come into Nighttown. It's the musicians. It's theater is the first love of my life. And when the old Cleveland Playhouse was there, and I kind of got entwined in that. I was on the board there for a while, and all the great theater companies in Cleveland Heights and the music. Where else could you want to be in the greater Cleveland area than where I was, right exactly at the top of Cedar Hill? So I'm going to miss the people and the banter and the staff, but mostly those neighbors in Cleveland Heights. What a hell of a place to have done business and spent your, Russ, I don't think I've ever actually I don't tell anyone this, but if they hadn't paid me anything to do this, I'd have been happy, because it really hasn't been work. It's been a labor of love and a joy to do. So there's no regrets on my end, I can tell you.
Well, that'll be our secret. How's that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get it.
you
Absolutely.
touched you touched on this earlier, Brendan, but you got emotional. You said New Year's Eve when you were there. I mean, tell me about what Nighttown means to you personally.
Well, the funny thing is, the last month or so, I've been going in there and I've been sitting there in empty rooms, and I sit there, and occasionally I may have a drink while I'm sitting there. But when the walls talk to me, the people that were in there talk to me. When you're in a place 29 years and you have celebrated, births, deaths, weddings, bar mitzvahs, communions. It's the whole fabric of the place that, one girl said to me today, she was one of my sales reps, and she said to me, I buried my dad there. I did my rehearsal dinner there. I had my kids' birthday parties there, and I met my husband on my first date there. There you go. I mean, that's what it is. I said to someone last week, they asked me, what's your favorite day of the year at Nighttown? I think they all expected me to say New Year's Eve or St. Patrick's Day, maybe. My favorite day at Nighttown has always been Christmas Eve. Because on Christmas Eve, unlike most restaurants in the world, we are so busy because all the people that grew up with the place since 1965, they're now grandmothers and great grandmothers and great grandfathers, all the way down to the kids. They all show up to the place they grew up with. And I've got tables of 16, 14, 20, and I would bring out the old Irish Christmas crackers and let the kids pull on them. And that was the day that gave me the greatest pleasure, is being there with all the people who made Nighttown what it is over the last 55 years. So,
yeah. Where you from in Ireland?
I'm from County Kerry, a small fishing village on the west coast of Ireland, middle of nowhere, 1,500 people. My parents owned a small supermarket and a restaurant, and that's where I guess I learned to ply my trade. Because when you're behind the register at age 12 or 13, you get to know every single person in the town. And it doesn't matter what college I attended or what high school I attended. My greatest education was in that little store and that little restaurant. It gave me the confidence to get on a plane at age 19 and take a chance and fly to New York and see what life was going to bring me, I guess.
And how old are you, Brent, if I can ask you that?
I'm 57.
Oh, you're a young man, please.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. You're a young man. You're a young man, definitely. I'm 60.
Yeah.
You're young.
Well, yeah. After today, I think I put on a few years, but yeah, yeah. And hopefully I'll do something else going forward. I just don't know. My wife said to me a couple of years ago when a dear friend died, she said, when someone dies, you take a year. You don't do no knee jerk reactions. And tonight, Nighttown, to me, anyways, something of a death to me. And so I'll wait a year before I make my next move, and then hopefully I'll make another move. So,
You think you'll stay here in town?
no question. I have an apartment in Manhattan on 94th Street and Broadway, and I love that place, second to Cleveland. And it's just a tiny little 550 square foot apartment, but I love strolling down Broadway. I love the theater. I love the parks. I love the bridges. I'll be spending some time in New York and time in Cleveland.
That's a great area. Just
Yeah.
a couple more questions, and I'll let you go, Brendan. There are going to be people who see this and are going to be very sad that you are selling Nighttown, because you are obviously a huge part of what has made Nighttown successful. What do you want to say to them?
Nighttown, the essence of Nighttown and the place it is was created by my predecessor, not by me. It was created by John Barr. Nighttown is the community that surrounds it. And while I hope people will miss me, and who knows, maybe the new owners might want a role for me in it, and I'd be happy to fill that role. But Nighttown, at the end of the day, is a community gathering place, and the community, as long as the community continues to gather there, my best hope is 10 years from now they'll say Brendan who, while they're still having a great time at Nighttown.
That's excellent. And I'm going to presume, not to get personal here, but I presume you got a pretty good offer.
Yeah. Yes, I did. That's a tough question to answer, because it certainly wasn't all down to the price. But in a COVID world, when someone comes to you and wants to buy your block, and a lot of reasons why they wanted to buy my block was because of the success. Russ, 20 years ago, I was one of the founding members of the Cedar Fairmont Special Improvement District, and the neighborhood well, and you've driven through that neighborhood for a long time. We have improved that neighborhood greatly, and we've worked very hard to do it. And the culmination of that was the Top of the Hill development. So, while I'm happy with my own personal result, it really is. It's the neighborhood. It's the people It's the building owners, it's the Sal Russos, the Mike Oceaneros that made that neighborhood what it is long before I got there. I'm just a continuing piece of the puzzle in Cedar Fairmont. And going back to the 1920s, it was the neighborhood, and now it's the neighborhood again, and it's only going to get better with this news tonight. I promise you.
Well, I can tell you, as someone who has loved Nighttown since I arrived in town 9 years ago, not only is it a great place, but you made it special. And I tell you, I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss seeing you there when I come to visit.
Well, I'll be the guy at the end of the bar, so I'll still be there. I'll just be on the other side of the bar, so don't worry. And Russ, can I just compliment you? I knew you before you came to Cleveland on TV. You bring a professionalism to news in Cleveland that's second to none, and I thank you for that. And it's one of the reasons why our go-to TV station here every night is Channel 3. It just is, and I have very happy memories of Channel 3 and all my days down there with in the morning show. Doing my cooking segments. Channel 3 have always been very good to me and have given me a great stage in which to practice my craft. So thank you guys at Channel 3 for that.
Well, Brendan, listen, congratulations to you. Look forward to seeing you in the future when the world gets a little normal. I'd love to sit down and have a beer, just talk about Cleveland and New York.
Absolutely, Russ. Yeah.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night and good luck. And stay safe.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.